Jen, I wonder if you'd tell us a little bit about your work.
Sure. Kind of take it back a little bit
Yeah.
and bring it to the present. So I went to college in New York City, was studying to be an English major, and during that time in college, I had some difficulties coming from Burlington, moving to New York City. Thought I kind of knew how to live in the world and thought I was very mature, but I really got involved in some dark areas of life and relationships, and was involved in a relationship that turned out to be pretty abusive in a lot of different aspects. And I think that was the first time that I really understood what sadness and despair and not really understanding who I was, where that came from. I was in a bit of a depression at that point, trying to figure out what was happening. And through my family and people praying for me, I was able to move through that. Went into work in the corporate world as a publicist for several years. And I was actually in New York when 9/11 happened. And I think God really used my personal experiences when I was in college and also just the corporate experience of being in New York when something like 9/11 happened, to see people's hurt and their pain. But I, at that point, just felt like I really want to do something. I want to be able to be with people who are hurting. I want to be able to sit with them and hear their stories and try to bring some type of love and hope to them. And so I came back to North Carolina and went to grad school. I did a master's of social work and was working towards my license to be a licensed clinical social worker. So I started off in the mental health arena. And really loved that journey of being able to have the privilege of walking beside people as they were sharing their times of joy as well as their times of pain and sorrow. And it's really holy ground when you sit and you listen to people and you try to be with them. During that time, I was working for a government agency, so I couldn't share faith a lot during that time. But I look back and see how Jesus really allowed me to learn how to just be with people, to show his compassion, his love with them, even if I wasn't able to always talk about him in words. And then sometimes people did want to walk into those conversations of faith, and I would see God really show up in a beautiful way. After spending a few years in community mental health, I felt God was asking me to look at a different arena. So I actually joined staff with Crew. So part of the ministry was really reaching out and equipping staff to minister to people who were going through loss and grief, whether it was from something large scale like a disaster or war to something maybe more individual like unexpected loss of a family member. And so that journey really allowed me to see how God could work in times of devastating pain and despair. I was brought back to North Carolina and actually met Seth, my husband, and we ended up getting married. And so that took me on a little bit of a different path. But we had our daughter Reese about a year later and moved back to the Burlington area. And I felt at that time God was asking me to go back into working with people. So I've been working in a private practice. I have a private practice. Mainly I'm working with women right now who are just navigating through a lot of life transitions, difficulties. So just really love to be part of people's journeys and hearing their stories and really inviting God when it's appropriate to be part of that unfolding.
Thanks, Jen. I want us to shift. We've been talking about lamenting with others. We have to also learn how to lament with ourselves, right? More than any other resource, the Psalms show us the way. They open the door to this way of being really honest. Honest with God, honest with ourselves. They remind us, you can almost feel it in some of the Psalms, how good it feels to let it out, to be open, to not be afraid, to freely express the deepest things in our heart. And Charmaine's going to read one of those Psalms or a portion of Psalm 32.
So Psalm 32, 1-5. Oh, what joy for those whose disobedience is forgiven, whose sin is put out of sight. Yes, what joy for those whose record the Lord has cleared of guilt, whose lives are lived in complete honesty. When I refused to confess my sin, my body wasted away. Day and night, your hand of discipline was heavy on me. My strength evaporated like water in the summer heat. Finally, I confessed all my sins to you and stopped trying to hide my guilt. I said to myself, I will confess my rebellion to the Lord, and you forgave me. My guilt is gone. All my guilt is gone.
So do you see the intersection there, the weaving together? There's lament, but sometimes our lament is a confession. And we come to terms with our brokenness, our fallenness, our rebelliousness. There was a book that came out years ago, The Day America Told the Truth. And it was based on this incredible project that a bunch of sociologists had put together. There was one day, teams of people all over the country gave people an opportunity to tell a whole truth about their life with absolute assurance that there would be no way for anyone to trace their story back to them. And as they interviewed people after their experience of telling their deepest, darkest secrets, the resounding chorus was, it was exhilarating. What does that look like in your life? When you are alone with the truth of yourself, and there's sadness, there's confusion, there's that moment like we see in Paul's life when he says, what is the deal with me? I do things I don't want to do. I don't do things I want to do. I'm just a hot mess. And those are the words I'd use for myself. Some days I just find myself so turned around, so upside down. And I hate admitting it. And I love it too. Because it's so liberating.
Yeah, I think that freedom for me, like Charmaine, I was raised in a Christian home with just great parents that, our foundation needed to be based in truth, and we loved church and all of that. And for me, the darkest point in my life was college and beyond. And it wasn't just a 4-year experience, it was, a decade and a half afterwards. And when I came out of that and came to a true saving faith, that, the word you used, Phil, was exhilaration, or it was exhilarating. It came for me at the moment I became a real follower of Christ. And that foundation, sorry to backpedal, but that foundation always seems to come to play when I'm trending in the wrong direction, or if I'm accusing myself of some sin or something in my life is not Christ honoring. I go back to what life was pre-Christ and what it is post-Christ. And that's been exhilarating. It is the foundation for living day to day, is knowing that the character of God is the character of God, and I can trust it, and I can, no matter where I am, He created me, and I can lean into Him.
Is it easy for any of us?
No.
What makes it so hard?
People are messy.
They're still human.
Yeah.
I think it's in ways I find it more embarrassing. That's why I don't share it so often. Unless it's like a one-on-one people who know me, then I will, yes, I'll tell you this. Because I feel so much shame in it, but I don't feel like I will be judged with it. Like it took me 5 years to share it. And this past year is the first time I've ever have. And it's honestly because I was so embarrassed because there's an identity issue that once I do share it, I'm like that guy. I'm that guy who is now that people, will they walk eggshells around me? Like, am I like emotionally unstable and stuff? And it's the fear of that. It's a lot of fear. And then that turns into worry. So it just kind of picks up.
I think it's easy to feel like we have to put on masks a lot. And I think that I'm kind of jumping off of what Virgo is saying is the idea of, wow, if we really are real with who we are sometimes, are we going to be outcast? Are we going to be loved? Are we going to be accepted? And I think the aspect of knowing that we have a God, though, that sees us and knows us and accepts us, who is opening his arms to receive us back and wants to be in relationship. Because I think when we're in those places of, if it's sin or if maybe we're having a lot of pain, I mean, I talk with people about this a lot because sometimes we say, let's take it to the cross. And, when I was growing up, you take your sin to the cross. You ask for forgiveness, you repent. But can we really do that with pain? Are we getting forgiveness for pain? Not really. I mean, we can choose to go into ways that are unhealthy to deal with our pain.
Yes.
But Jesus wants it all. He wants our pain. He wants to take our sin. He wants to take our needs, because sometimes we have needs. Sometimes it's, I really need someone to come up and talk to me or see me, or I might need a job, or I might need something. And so I think that important piece of no matter what it is that we're struggling with, Jesus wants us to bring it to him, and that there's freedom in knowing that we're still going to be loved through it. But then it opens up the connection in a way that really, I think, helps to free our hearts more too, and allows us to be more free with others if we're rooted in that place of love.
What do you think would happen in people's lives if somehow they could believe that there's nothing they could ever do to get God to love them any more or any less? Isn't that some of the struggle? Because we live in a world that's so conditional. If I do this, I get that, right? God loves us as we are, not as we should be.
No, from what Jim was saying earlier about the giving it all, like just kind of like your pain and stuff, I think I find myself almost afraid, like, to part ways with it. Because it's like now it becomes like, I've been with it so long, it's like a crutch, and I understand it, and I use it. I mean, it's comfortable. So I'm afraid that something else might slip in, I guess, to...
Is it the familiarity of it?
Yes.
And I know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
So I find myself personally where I'm not comfortable with it. I'm comfortable with this sense of loneliness, or this sense of like just hopelessness in a way. But then I feel like I'm always teetering with a very dangerous tightrope. I think I'm almost in a way of like just too overconfident, I guess, and in my abilities to deal with my stuff. So I think that's why I'm so afraid to give all sometimes,
it's too much, it sounds like.
Yeah, that strikes me, when you were talking about that strikes me of like, just, you're right. And I find myself doing that. So.
I wonder if it's like an invitation of that, it's that idea of like Jesus walking with us in it. So it's maybe sometimes we're not at the point to just release it all. I'm not ready to let it go, but hey, can I give a little bit to him? Can he help carry? Can he walk with me through it? Because I think that's really real, Virgo, and I appreciate you saying that, because I think sometimes we can, and I just did it, the all, just put it out there, and it's I think it's more of a process. It's a trusting in different ways, but it's not always just the easy, let's just release it, and now I'm good, and I can go on with my life. It's
almost sounds like a muscle that you
right,
exercise.
Yes.
I'm picturing our granddaughters on the side of the pool this summer, and how frightened they were, and not trusting. They were not confident their papa was going to catch them. I had told them I would, but they weren't sure. But the more they tried me, it's beautiful. And I find in my journey that Jesus is just so patient and not demanding. Just give me what you can give. I can work with that. I think we're making our point well, that this is messy. And there aren't neat, tidy answers to some of these things that we're exploring.